The shrimp gurgler is one of the most fun flies that I throw. It catches cruising redfish, speckled trout under lights. Hell, even largemouth bass will eat it. Here, we can see an example of how effective of a fly this is. I have a cruising redfish off my bow. The fly hits the water, I strip it near the red, and he turns to try and eat it. Sadly, I'm stupid and pulled the fly out of his mouth. Here, we see another example. I've got a redfish swimming near me. I cast the fly out, I strip it a few times, and he eats. But again, I fail at getting a hook set. I suck, I know. So, how about we tie up one of these bad boys? Here is the ingredient list for my personal variant. Some people like to use chenille instead of dubbing, but to each their own. Me personally, I prefer to use dubbing. It builds up a lot of bulk without a lot of weight. To start off this fly, what we're going to do is we're going to pinch our barb. A lot of people will say that saltwater fish are hardy enough that pinching the barbs is pointless. However, this is more to make hook removal much more easy. Next, we're going to take our black thread and we're going to begin winding down the shank of the hook. Now, some will say, oh, you're leaving too much of a tag end, or you could have cut that tag end off a little bit earlier. And you know what? They're right. It doesn't matter though. This is our fly, and we're going to make whatever kind of fly that we want. We're going to go ahead and take our thread, and we're going to wind it all the way back to the pinched barb of our hook. Now we're also going to make a little bit of a bump there, and that's going to be where we're going to secure our next ingredient, the craft fur. I'm using barred tan craft fur for this, however you can use just regular old tan craft fur. Heck, you could even use chartreuse craft fur if you want. A lot of speckled trout flies really look good with chartreuse. I don't know what it is about the color of chartreuse, but speckled trout practically jump on top of it. Now I'm pulling out the butt ends of all of this craft fur. This is going to eliminate a lot of the bulk, and it's going to allow me to better secure it to the shank of my hook. Now, the measurements don't have to be exact at all. A lot of people like to make theirs about roughly the shank of the hook, and if you want to go ahead and do that, that's perfectly fine. I'm making mine just a little bit longer. It might be a little bit too long for some people's liking, but personally, I don't think anything's wrong with it. We're going to go ahead and snap off our butt ends, and we're going to cover up those butt ends as best we can with our thread. Now, as you can see, I failed to capture a little bit of that fur, but hey, that's perfectly fine. I do believe it was Bob Ross who said, "We don't make mistakes, we make happy little accidents." And that's what this is, it's just a happy little accident. However, I also have a quote that I like to tell people, especially those new to fly tying. I like to tell them that a fly doesn't need to be perfect to everyone else, it just has to be perfect in your eyes. The flies will get better as you learn to tie. And if you're new, you're going to ruin a lot of flies before you get any of them perfect. Up next, we have the crystal flash that we're going to tie in. 2 to 3 strands will do. What we're going to do is we're going to cut them from the hank, then we're going to lay them alongside the craft fur. We'll try to make them a little bit longer, or just as long as the craft fur, whichever you prefer, and then we'll double them back over on the other side and tie those in. It doesn't have to be exactly perfect. All that matters is that you're happy with it. Next up, we're going to go ahead and start building up the body of our fly. I personally love Fly Tier's Dungeon. I like the penny pinch. Every single dime that I make has meaning to me. And when I need fly tying supplies on a budget, things like Fly Tier's Dungeon's dubbing, they're so perfect for the pocketbook. I have 3 different colors here. I have a tan, I have a bluish green, and I also have one that has a bit of a green tinge to it. The main reason why we're sticking with these colors is that they're going to look like the body of a white shrimp. White shrimp typically come inshore during the summer, and we're going to try and imitate one of those bad boys. Hence why we have the lighter color body top for our foam. Next up, we're going to go ahead and make a dubbing loop. Now, don't judge me here. I know that this dubbing look looks like absolute dog dookie. Well, that's because my dubbing twister has gone MIA. So we're just going to make do with what we've got. For those that have never made a dubbing loop, all you're going to do is wrap your thread around your finger, wrap it along the shank of the hook until you make a loop, probably about 1 inch to 1.5 inches long, maybe a little bit longer depending on how big of a hook you're covering. And we're just going to take this dubbing, we're going to put it inside of that loop. Once we put it in, we're going to go ahead and grab a dubbing twister, or in my case, a hackle plier, and we're going to spin that right round, baby, right round like a record, or like a piece of meat. If you get it, you get it. So once we spin it, what we're going to do is start wrapping it around the shank of the hook. Now, a lot of people will use chenille for this, and that's perfectly fine. You use whatever ingredients you feel you need to use. However, I personally enjoy using dubbing because, again, it builds up a lot of bulk. We're going to go ahead and wrap this dubbing to about the middle of the shank of the hook. And the reason being is that's where we're going to tie in our set of silly legs. These silly legs are also from Fly Tier's Dungeon. I highly recommend them because of their elasticity and the fact that they will last through a couple of fish. We're going to take 1 strand, cut it in half, 1 makes 2. We'll put those 2 along the shank of the hook on either side, tie them about the halfway point, double them back, that way 2 makes 4. That's quick maths. Once we do that, we'll try and capture it with a thread. Now, if they're not laying back perfectly, again, that's perfectly fine, because we can actually use the body of that dubbing to double back and secure those legs where we want to get them. That's a little secret that I've learned over the last couple of years, because believe me, getting silly legs to sit still and where you want them exactly, oh man, you might as well be herding cats. So once we get the dubbing loop where we need it, we'll cut off any excess thread or any excess dubbing, and we'll start to build a little bit of a base to put our craft foam on top of. Now, speaking of craft foam, I have to give you this very specific warning. Do not do what I'm doing. Do not use your good fly tying scissors to cut foam. In fact, you'd be better off using something like a pair of thick scissors or a razor blade. Use whatever you need to, but please, for the love of all that is holy, do not use your good fly tying scissors. You will ruin the blades on them. And trust me, they suck to sharpen. Anywho, we're basically going to cut one end to a tapered point. Don't ask me for any angles of how this taper needs to be. It doesn't have to be perfect on either side. Use however much perfection you personally want to use. And we're going to take the flat side and we're going to try and make it a little bit more rounded. The main reason why I like a rounded head is just for cosmetics. It just does not look right with a flat head. I mean, the only thing that looks good with a flat head, personally, is a screwdriver or a flathead catfish. So, we're going to lay it on top. A lot of people will like their foam to be about as long as their tail, but this is perfectly fine. And we want the front of that foam to be a little bit over the hook eye. And what we'll do is we'll wrap it around a couple of times to capture it. Then we'll put the thread in front of the foam and start to build up a bit of a dam. Build up a little bit of a ramp so that foam's not covering the hook eye. Once we get that foam angled up a little bit, we'll go ahead and do a whip finish around it. That's going to secure it for the most part. Now, I do recommend taking some epoxy or glue to further secure it, But if that's all you've got, that's perfectly fine. Now, if you've ever looked at a white shrimp, you know that the body is a bit segmented. And not segmented as in like an ant or some kind of bug, but there are bars where each piece of the shell meets. And so to imitate those barrings, what we're going to do is wrap thread around another piece of the foam and make it segmented. We'll wrap around, we'll do another whip finish. Now we want this segment to go where the silly legs are. That's going to give it a little bit more definition. And then lastly, we're going to do our last segment right around where the point starts, or toward the very back end of the fly. And again, you don't have to do this, I just personally like how it looks. Move your foam around if you need to get it perfectly centered and perfectly balanced to your liking. The main idea of this fly is it's going to imitate a shrimp popping on the surface. You can cruise it slow over top of the water to make a few ripples, or you can pop it like it's a popping bug, and it will look just like a shrimp busting on the surface. I have to say, I love using this fly. I love using this fly for cruising redfish. I love using it for speckled trout when they're busting. This is just a fun fly to tie, and it's a really fun fly to throw. If you're looking for anything for inshore species, be it redfish, speckled trout, tarpon, snook, barramundi, hell, it doesn't matter. If it's a predatory fish, throw this fly at it. Let me know how it works for you. Let me know how tying this fly went for you. Leave me a comment and let me know how I did. Let me know how annoying my voice is. Let me know how annoying this video is. Let me know any kind of constructive criticism, and I promise I will see you on the next one. Thank you, and good bite, good fight, good night.